Today we're getting under the hood with Denielle Finkelstein, a mother, daughter, sister, women's advocate, and the co-founder and co-CEO of Unicorn. Denielle is a trailblazing entrepreneur with a passion to advance women in society. After a distinguished 20-plus year career as an executive in the fashion industry, Denielle joined forces with her cousin Thyme Sullivan to drive systemic change for future generations of women. Denielle's visionary leadership and infectious enthusiasm fuel Unicorn's mission to transform the workplace. By strategically placing period products in every bathroom stall, Unicorn challenges norms, advocates for the importance of basic needs, and leads a historic journey of empowerment. Denielle and the Unicorn team are redefining workplace and building standards and championing women's progress globally, one bathroom stall at a time. Unicorn's strategic partnerships with industry giants like JP Morgan Chase and American Express have positioned them as a formidable force for health equity, sustainability, and wellness. Wow. Welcome, Denielle.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I feel like I've known you for a very long time. Very fortunate to have you in my amazing circle.
Well, the feeling is mutual, and it's so interesting how when we just connect as women, we just connect deeply and sometimes profoundly. So I am equally very grateful for this, but also grateful to be here. It's season 4, Women's March for Mental Wellness, and I'd love to begin the podcast. What was that inflection point, Denielle, that got you on the mental wellness journey?
Yeah, I love this question, and this is a really important one. As you shared, I spent 20 years in fashion and loved my career until I didn't. And really what became that turning point for me was, when you come from humble beginnings and you work super hard to get to finally that corner office. And it was, I think of my 23, 24-year-old self, like the dream was, I'm going to get to that job and I'm going to go sit in that seat. And I finally was there. And when you're in that moment, and you're seeing the success that you're having, and you've got this team of 100 people underneath you, and you're continuing to really shine. And then there's also the aspect too of there's a huge paycheck that goes around it. There's the ego of I've got this title, but at the end of the day, there were multiple things that were falling apart outside of the job itself because I put career as the number one. And you always hear the phrase, you got to put your oxygen mask on first. And I failed at that. What was happening outside of the day-to-day was I was completely burnt out. I was leaving my house every day, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. I was getting home, if I was lucky, 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. And I was barely seeing my kids during the week. And I love being a mom, but I also love being a working mom. So I know that that is one of the things. I will continue to always be that working mom. It makes me a better mom. And I was missing out on too much in my kids' lives. There were first days of school, there were end of school, there were concerts, there were sports, there was everything that I was missing out on. And in my marriage, I was missing out on key parts of my marriage with my husband. And then the piece is I wasn't taking care of myself. For 3 years in that last job, I never went to the dentist. I never went to the gynecologist. I never had a mammogram. I missed out on all of those things. And so the oxygen mask wasn't happening and I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And then to top it off, the environment I was in was not a healthy environment. It was not a great culture. And it came to August of 2018, but there had been some lead up. And the lead up had been my husband saying, he's like, listen, babe, you're a shell of yourself. It's almost like you're an abused wife and I'm not doing the abusing. He goes, we've got to figure something out. And he gave me that permission because I was so broken, because there was an ego side to me of I made it. I'm there. I can't let I can't let all these things have me step out of what I believed was a sign of success. And I was having there was a breakdown. I was completely burnt out. And I am grateful for my husband because he did give me that permission to say, we're going to figure this out because I was the breadwinner in our family. And that permission of stepping away and finding what my new path and my new purpose and my new passion was going to be was scary as hell. But what it did is it gave me permission now to take care of myself, to focus on my family, to focus on my marriage, to focus on my friends, but also to create something that I didn't know, that now I know what I'm doing is created this whole other world, that I got back all of those things that I had lost because I stepped away. I re-engaged with myself. I re-engaged with my family. I re-engaged with my friends, and I took things to a whole different level. And I started to own what it meant to take care of our mental health. And I put my oxygen mask on first, which I think we all have to say is one of the most important things that we can do as a mom, as a friend, as a wife, as a woman, but as anybody. I regained what I had lost because I lost sight of certain things. And now this has allowed me, now really making sure that I'm taking care of my mental health. It has allowed me to reinvest my energy and my time in a very different way that I'm super proud of. I'm grateful for my husband for, really being that amazing. He's been a cheerleader for me since day one. We're college sweethearts. So we've been together now 30 years, which is
Wow,
unbelievable.
that's amazing.
Yeah. So yes, this is mental health is and really making sure that we invest our time, but to have the support around you is probably one of the most important things. Somebody who can actually say to you, like, it's time, or how can I help? What can I do?
Wow. First of all, thank you so much for sharing. And there's a lot to unpack there. We know that there's been so many conversations over the past couple of years, probably since pandemic, about burnout in the workplace, but having the courage to say, I'm done. And I think it's interesting as well, Denielle, the way you said your husband sort of gave you permission because you yourself weren't giving yourself permission. And so you're fortunate to have that. But everything you shared resonates so deeply with me because I did the same thing, except I didn't get permission from my husband. I just did it because I knew if I
Mhm.
didn't, and I didn't, it's so interesting because, I think that it's commonly referred to as burnout in the workplace. I didn't think about it that way when I did it. I was done. And so I think, your story will resonate with so many women. What I'd love to do is sort of go on the journey with you. So you have this big job. You went
Mhm.
through, navigating that transition. What did that look like? And what was the timing? And how did it sort of
Mhm.
unfold, if you will?
Yeah, I would say that there were a couple of things that caused the burnout itself. Traveling like I was traveling, it was a 3 hour commute round trip. But the time there was the travel time, there was the I am a I totally am a workaholic. So that is something I will say about myself, which is not a healthy thing. But when I was in that environment, it was perpetual. I just made it worse. And I put all my time and energy into what I was doing and forgetting about what was outside. And I would say that there were a lot of factors that led into it. And when I think about when I actually made the transition and what I gained afterwards, was those last 3 years of my career in fashion, there were a couple things that I had lost. So I am an extremely passionate person. And when I do put my energy in, I put my energy in 100%. So there was a piece around that. But another part was I'd stopped learning. And I am a very curious person. And I almost felt like, okay, I can keep doing this. Like I can do this job in my sleep. Like I'm not feeling challenged. So when you think about, lost the passion, I didn't have the curiosity, I wasn't learning anymore. And then you couple it with all the exterior things that were sort of happening around. When I look back now, that's probably part of why I had lost also some of that centering for myself of because there were other factors that were also leading into this. So when I actually stepped out, when I walked out, like I walked August 2018, went in, handed my papers, and said, today is my last day. I will say that it was the scariest moment of my career and of my life, because again, I was the breadwinner. And, but what it gave me was permission. My husband gave me that first sort of, like, babe, maybe this is something we need to do. But it then I opened up a door to myself to say, okay, there's another road ahead. There's another part of your career that's going to be different. And I didn't know what it was. And so there was an excitement, there was a scariness, there was all of those, like all those things that you kind of build around. But I do remember those sleepless nights and the anguish that I was having. But what I was able to do was to remember what I was good at. I would stay up and I would write notes about myself because I had to actually like retrain myself of where what I was good at, what I was, what I'd been successful in. And I remember looking at those lists because again, those sleepless nights of what have I done to my family? I regained my confidence. There was a moment of, okay, we're going to figure this out. And this is where, I would say like serendipitous things is I didn't know what I was going to do. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go back into fashion. In my mind, I'm going to go back into fashion, but I'm going to go into a smaller role and not a smaller role, sorry, a smaller company. In my mind, I wanted to get my hands dirty again. I loved being in the weeds and sort of building a company from small to big. And so going from running billion-dollar businesses, in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to a startup. I'm going to do something that maybe is like 10 to $20 million. And I was super excited about this opportunity for this 10 to 20 million. And this is where the serendipitous moments happen. My cousin, who I hadn't seen in 30 years, we grabbed lunch together. I sent a note to her over Facebook and said, hey, listen, we're cousins. We live a little bit far away. We live an hour away from each other. I would love to take you to lunch. And she was also in a transition. And we sat over this lunch and she jokingly said, she's like, how funny would it be if we went into work together? And I said, you know what? I'm not quite so sure. I said, I think I need to take a little bit of time off. I need to spend some time with my family and really like figure out what my next was going to be. But I left that lunch and what I realized were a couple of things. What I was missing from the last job was the curiosity, having something that was purpose and passion driven, and the flexibility of being able to build an organization so I could make sure that I was around for my family, that I could make sure that I was there for my husband, and that I could build and rebuild myself. And I left there being initially, absolutely not, I'm not going to go do this. And 2 weeks later, we were working together. And I got to regain myself. I got to regain my identity, all of those aspects which were very important to me, and still have the career that I knew I wanted to have, and to still be the mom that I wanted to be, the friend that I wanted to be, the wife that I wanted to be, all of those aspects. But most importantly was defining myself with my career.
I think that's amazing. And I love the way you sort of unfolded your story. I want to go back a little because it was something that resonated, which I think all women can relate to, is that feeling and that responsibility to your family. And when we are the breadwinners, I myself was the last 5 years of my marriage. And I'll tell you, it's a lot of responsibility. And so it's like, and we're doing all the other things in the household and those dynamics. So, and also I want to make another observation because you made a comment, I'm a workaholic. You're probably no less a workaholic today. It's just more in a culture that breeds inspiration and wonder and curiosity. And I think, because I think that, when you are kind of that person, I can relate to it. You don't step away from that. You just find balance in different ways because you're probably motivated by creating, right? And so I think that your journey will speak to so many women and having that moment and regaining. So I want to like sort of go specifically into regaining that confidence and sort of dive deeper there. And I'll tell you why. Because again, I think it's a great opportunity to educate or share with other women what it takes when you do have that burnout moment, not knowing, going out and that transition to the unknown, and sort of fence sitting. Do I go back into the space that I was good at because I know it, or do I take something different? So tell us about that, Denielle.
There was a lot to unpack there. And I would say that, again, I go back to those sleepless nights and I look at that list and I look at what my accomplishments had been. And there are so many of us that define ourselves, what our titles are and our salaries. And that's natural to who we are. And that had always been and I was always one of those youngest executives. like my whole career. I was always one of the firsts. I was young, I was a C-suite at the last job, and I was the youngest by a good 10 years. And so what happened in that transition for me was having to regain that confidence. And there was a big transition. I would say actually it took almost a year because I had to learn how to check my ego at the door. And why I say that is when you live your career on, you've got the C-suite, you've got the title, you've got the salary. When you go into a startup and you're starting over, I was starting over. Nobody cared where I was coming from. We had to rebuild. So we were not rebuilding, we were building. We were building the business from $0. And so when you're going out there and you're proving yourself, in some ways, okay, yeah, they're like, great, you have this great job, but you're now going to go be an entrepreneur. Like, what the hell do you know about being an entrepreneur? And those were a lot of the responses. I mean, Thyme and I will both say, like, we've got amazing resumes. Like, why aren't people responding to us? And so it was having to check our ego. It was a lot of time of rebuilding that confidence. And there was also the rebuilding the passion piece. There was a lot of rebuild of those core strengths in a way that I had from my prior career that I had to just re-engage and bring back to the surface so that I could then show up very differently in this new job. And that transition was actually a growth time for me. I will tell you, so there
I
was a
love
moment
that.
that,
I
yeah,
love that.
there was one moment that I will tell you is because I was challenging myself. Do I actually go do this? Like, is this crazy? Like, should I go do this? And I called an old mentor of mine. He was the COO for me at Kate Spade. And I said, listen, can I just get your advice? Is this crazy for me to go and do this? And he said, listen, what I'm going to tell you is, he goes, give it a year. He goes, you are super curious. You're really good at what you do. He goes, you're going to take this time and you're going to learn. He said, so just absorb that time of learning again. And you're going to take it. If you decide you're not going to do it, then you can go do somewhere else, but you're going to take the skills that you've just gained over this last year to really then impact what that next role is going to be. And, here I am 7 years later. So that year passed very quickly.
Well,
But that advice was the best to me because it was helping also remind me of what I was good at and having someone else help support the outside of giving that feedback back in. That's where the networks around you, having the support system, having your trusted advisors that can provide you that information. That's where I was grateful that I could pick up the phone and say, hey, what do you think about this? And it's like my husband is my best trusted advisor, but also having outside career ones is huge as well.
I think that's great. And it's really interesting to have those mentors at those pivotal moments. Everything you said resonates. I feel like we've been on parallel journeys almost with the same timing 7 years ago, like where you're
Yeah.
transitioning out of something big, a big role, and sort of I don't want to call it ego death. For me, ego sedation and learning to find your voice again in a different capacity. And I think that's interesting. That goes back to where curiosity. But I love what your mentor had to say, which is give it a year. Use it
Mhm.
as it's almost like a growth platform, if you will. Use it as a it's your springboard, but it sprung you into the business you're in today in such a powerful way. And so, so kudos to you. I celebrate that. And I think it's really hard. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, those transitions, those pivotal moments, and making those and going and leaping into the unknown with almost a belief, because you have to go back and kind of believe in yourself again. So back to that
Yes.
word confidence. So I'd love to continue the journey with you, Denielle.
Yeah. So from that moment, checking the ego a year in, I will say that this transition into this part two of my career has hands down been the best part. I never knew that it could actually be this good. When you have a successful career like I did, to then be able to translate it into building something from $0. And this is the part that I love the most is we've also defined what the culture needs to look like. We've defined what When Thyme and I made a commitment from day one, don't miss, kids sports, don't miss the activities. Make sure I was never home for dinner, ever.
Neither
Breakfast,
was
forget it.
neither.
Like,
Well, I did breakfast, but I never did dinner. 5 days a week, never dinner.
yeah. So those were certain commitments that I made sure I am there when the kids were younger. Now my son's driving, so forget it. Like I'm not driving them to school anymore, but it was walking them to school. It was driving them to school. Those 15 minutes in the car were the most valuable 15 minutes of my day, of getting that with them, hearing their chatter, nonsense chatter, but it's the best chatter you could have. So it was the drop off, it was the pickup, it was breakfast, it was dinner. It was moments that I wasn't just getting home and tucking them into bed and lucky to give them a kiss on the cheek when I was home. This was being more present. This was just being engaged in their life. So this gift that this has given me over the last 7 years, and you hear now, and I'm in the midst of the teenage years. So I will say I am so grateful because of what this allowed me over this time. Is the teenage years are the hardest years. They don't really want you as much, but they're much deeper. The problems are much bigger. It's what everyone says. Like when they're little problems. When they're older, they're bigger problems. And they need you when they need you. And now I'm here. I can actually be present. I can still have the career, but that part of me and Thyme making sure and making that commitment to one another early on. We have to do this for ourselves. We have to do this for our team, and we have to do this for our organization. And being able to define what that looks like is so, so, so important, which then gives us there's never really balance, but it's how you find the different times of flexing in and out. We've also given the flexibility to our team. We have one woman on our team, and she said, listen, she's got two little ones. She said, this is the best part is I can take them, go do the things that I need to when I need to, but then I know that I can come back and work from 6 to 10 at night. And you've given me that flexibility in my career that you don't have in most majority 98% of jobs. And so I think there's all different aspects of what we're doing. But I would say that the most important part is that we have actually defined what it looks like to now take care of ourselves in a very different way.
That's wonderful. And I have to say, one of the words that stuck out to me is looking at being present today. What does presence look like? And I think it's not just, there's so many ways to define that. So present in your children's lives, but also when you think about, and in those micro moments, the chatters in the car. I love that. I love that. The
Ah,
before, the after, the breakfast, the dinner, little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. But when we think of presence in the context as well, when you sort of gain that freedom back,
huge.
if you will, it changes your dynamic in every aspect. And creating a culture that embodies that is
Mhm.
brilliant because
Mhm.
it makes for a very happy team, makes
Mhm.
for very loyal colleagues, which is what you need to lay the foundation to build a successful company. Let's go on that journey in terms of building that culture and the mission of
Yeah,
empowerment and putting one in every stall.
I know. It's really interesting as we have built the business and it is flexed in so many different ways. When we started our business, we were a product that we sold on shelf and we were successful in our own right. We were in over 3,000 retailers, local to us. We were in all your Wegmans. We were in HEB in the South. We were in Sprouts and Fresh Time. And, so really had a lot of success in building that business. And what we recognized was from day one, Thyme and I, what our mission had always been was our goal was we think about our daughters and how do we advance this next generation? How do we advocate for this next generation? And we weren't doing it really by selling a premium product on shelf. We were making some donations. We were feeling good about, that part, but really we had to think about the future. And we had to think about what were those barriers that we had and what are the barriers that this next generation could potentially have. And I think this is where having your own business and being able to have the flexibility of owning your own business and to pivot and finding those moments of when it's right to pivot and that you have the ownership to be able to make that pivot. You go back to large corporate, you can't pivot, you can't do major pivots. So one of our biggest pivots, and this is, I applaud our team on this as well, because this was a big deal. We had the retail footprint, and we made the decision 3.5 years ago to 100% pull out of retail and say, you know what? That's not going to be our path. We're not upholding what our mission is. We're going to sell that premium product, but there's something bigger. And the real big piece for us was we had recognized that when you think of the workplace and you think of public areas, if there were period products, there was always this big, terrible metal machine that was in the common area. And Thyme and I are actually been fascinated since day one of those big metal machines, because most of the time they're broken, they're rusty, they're like terrible product, like all of those things. But there was something there because we did have some customers who we'd been selling into offices, and they would say, do you have a dispenser? Do you have a dispenser? Or can your product be vended into those dispensers? And so it became this moment of the spark that we sat back as a team and we were trying to figure out what was going on and what we could be doing differently in the business. And we all collectively agreed. And this is where the power of one, we've got a small team. And so everyone who's on the team has ownership in decision making, and they are part of, let's really think through this together. Let's be curious together. Let's dive in. And at this strategy meeting, we said, we're going to do this. And we 100. And so this is actually the funnier part is our head of sales. She said, I can't believe I'm going to say this. She said, because my job is head of sales, but I think we need to completely pull out of retail. She's like, I could essentially be firing myself. And we said, well, you're not firing yourself, because that actually is the right decision. Because at the end of the day, we had to put 100% of our energy. If we went and did retail as well as go after this new venture, we would have been overworked. We go back to all those things that we're talking about. We would have been overworked. We wouldn't have been focused. We would have been splitting our energy. And we had to really put our energy into one place and build that focus into one thing. And as soon as we did, and all of us mentally got ourselves there, we could actually see what that potential was. We could also see that we were upholding to that mission, that we were going to be advocating and advancing this next generation. And that was the power behind it. And getting our team to feel that they had that ownership in it was massive, because then they got behind this. They got to actually, and our head of sales, like she's still our head of sales and she's kicking it. Like she's still crushing it. And now in a different way.
I think first of all, that's phenomenal leadership. And I think it's very interesting because while, we started this conversation on the mental wellness journey on your personal and sort of opening up your story and your, the road you traveled, I think what's interesting to me is now coming back to period products, in particular in the workplace, because I think that there's nothing more stressful. You have to run to a meeting, suddenly you have your period and there's not a period product. So there is mental wellness in that, like helping support women. Exactly. So
Elizabeth, I want to just pull on that thread for one.
Perfect.
We've been running a survey with anywhere we've installed our dispensers. And so there's a QR code on the side of our box. And we've been running a survey for the last almost 2.5 years. The responses from women is, you've removed this mental load that I have carried for years. And we have a data point now on the stress level. It's 86% feel less stressed, because they know that is the availability of having that in the bathroom, but more importantly, in the bathroom stall. This is a piece that every woman could tell you a story of, I carry this stress. We have the opportunity to remove that. We're already carrying so many. The world right now we're all living in a bubble of stress. If we have an opportunity as organizations to remove just one element, that is massive. Yeah. And that's the part that we love to be able to go to organizations and say, hey, listen, here, we have data for you. We can share with you what this is going to do. Yeah.
I love that 86% number. I think it's really powerful. And, if we just individually sort of reflect back, I'm no longer in a big corporate workplace. nor do I have my period anymore, but there were moments when I had to worry about things like that. If you're running from a meeting and you don't have your pocketbook or whatever it may be.
Mhm.
So just supporting those moments, if you will. I'm
Yeah.
curious, Danielle, I love this question. We're asking every woman this. How are you marching for mental wellness? And it can be both personal and professional.
When I look back and reflect on what happened and where I was, when I now think about myself and over these last 7 years and the commitment I make to myself now, I put myself first. So if we don't, again, put ourselves first, and Thyme and I say this all the time, it actually goes, it's we're number one, family is number two, and unicorn is number three. And we all have to ensure that we are adjusting that way. And our team knows this as well. And anytime there is a moment where like, no, you're first, no, your family, like focus there. The job will get done, but the job isn't, it's a job. And we're excited about what we're building, but we have to take care of those two parts. And we all know the sacrifices that we have made and the mistakes in a way, or the lessons we've learned from, what we did in the past. And so, for me, these last 7 years is prioritizing myself and the importance that I have to do around prioritizing myself. And some of it is I love to walk in the morning, make sure that I'm getting outside, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm doing those things that I'm still feeling like I'm learning. The other part too for me is I get out now and it is get out and meet new people. And so that's like where my opportunity, like with you, is because of that curiosity that I have always had, now I'm in a world where when you're in fashion, I loved my career, but you're dealing with the same people all the time. I now am meeting individuals in so many different businesses and industries and walks of life and ages that I never would have had exposure to. I am learning every day. Every day is a new. Sometimes I'm learning too much, which you can't really say that, but I am. I
Yeah.
truly am. And I'm grateful for that because this opportunity of these last 7 years has given this to me, that I get to have my own ownership of me every day when I wake up, like like when I decide to work until when I decide that, you know what, this afternoon, my daughter, I'll tell you right now. So this is what happened. My kids are in the midst of finals. She's about to be 15 years old. And she's like, Mom, this afternoon, can we go to a parking lot and can we go drive? I'm like, absolutely. I said, Reese, 3:30 today, you and I, we're gonna go drive but it's stuff like that where we get to be able to build that around what we're doing. And so I mean, I've said a multitude of things, but my mental health is extremely important. And it becomes when I don't take care of it, everyone else feels it. Again, I am one that my energy, people feed off of my energy. I feed off of people's energy, but I exude energy. And so when my mental health is not good, everyone around me knows it. And so it's all a balancing act. Like, look, we're all allowed to have bad days. We're all allowed to have those amazing days. And it's just for me to be able to check myself when I'm feeling like I'm not myself, when I feel I have to really step back, and I take that time now to actually say, okay, what do I need to adjust? What needs to happen? Where do I need to be spending my time? And sometimes it's like, I just need my own time. I need to step away. I need to do those things. So I think I'm much more aware than I ever was before. And it's this time that has allowed me in my new career.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that. What was going through my mind as you're saying this is like, I think this next chapter that you've been in has been one of great self-awareness. And I think that when women, and I'm saying that, and you just closed with being more aware, when women take that time to be self-aware, that creates the space. And you use the word, you didn't use this word, but I love this word, is having agency over your day.
Agency.
But it's agency not over just your moment, your day, your month, your year, but agency conceptually over your life holistically. And that, of course, goes in and gives you agency as it relates to your business. And there's
Yeah.
something incredibly powerful about that, right?
Huge. It's huge. I will say one of the things that has helped me also is, I really map out calendar. And so that there is sort of that I'm blocking time. And then I would say that's actually more so in the last 2 years is ensuring. And the night before, I always look at my calendar for the next day and what are my top three priorities that I have to do? Because we all have lists. We all have lists of 20 things. And those are the things that overwhelms you, actually like 50 things. And that's what overwhelms you. But if I know that I can be successful in three things, then it's like, okay, that day was successful. And then I also have like my block below. It's actually this great planner that I have, but the block below of like, what's my night going to be? So sometimes it's like, I've got 16 loads of laundry I need to fold. Or sometimes it's going to be like, today, I'm now going to put that in. I'm going to go driving with my daughter. It's finding that what am I going to accomplish personally, but also what are the things and that has helped me as well when it comes to the balance of my mental health. Even if it's one or two things in a day, that's okay. One other thing too that's helped my mental health is I would say that I put down, even if they're small, daily wins. Doesn't matter what they are.
I love that.
I've just brought this into our team as well. And we have in our Slack channel, everybody, like it may not be big, it may be huge, it may be tiny, whatever it is, put it in. Because then we also have a trail of watching what are our daily wins. And that's just again that shifting our how our brains are functioning doesn't need to be, they don't all need to be that you've landed the biggest customer out there. This is, I got a phone call with one person, or, oh my goodness, like, we installed in one location, but what that means to you, whatever it might be. And they're personal. So we're putting in personal as well with our daily wins for our team too, which is really like, and so it's just changing around our perspective of things.
I think that's amazing. I would imagine that's fantastic for the culture, even with a small team.
Mhm.
And I think that it just shifts, it's growth mindset. It looks at things from a positive versus we can always say,
Always.
what could be better? But with that
Mhm.
shift on focus, with getting that call, getting that meeting, instead of feeling it's totally outcome, it's almost like getting back and the small wins can be also the process. And for
Yep.
me, that's been a big step in this phase of my life is going back to being in the process. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, that's
Being
interesting to
present, the being present, like what's happening in that moment. Because we all naturally, we go, 15 steps ahead. But I love what you just said because it is in the process. Everything is about the buildup. And we're all learning along the path. And I think that's the part too, is, especially with our team. And there's so much that every day that we are learning something new, and they are as well, and reflecting on what those lessons are. And this again, great that we're in a small company because we can pivot from those lessons. We can move from those lessons, having the history almost of what those look like to say, okay, here's where the new path is going to take us.
and also having the courage and the capacity. So the capacity to own it and say, like going back to being in those retail environments and having the
I love that.
capacity to say, I am willing to pivot. 'Cause there's many ways to look at capacity, and then, because it can be the ability to accomplish, but the capacity to take that bold step with the
Mhm.
unknown. And I want to make one other comment about that. We are in such an unprecedented climate right now in the US. And
Mhm.
so there is so much unknown on a daily basis. So being in a small startup, having that ability and capacity, and time to really make quick, bold decisions with the team is just fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a part that we feel lucky, truly that we have built. I mean, I'm grateful for what I have every day. I truly am. When I look back and that this is what I'm able to do in this phase of my career. And, I say like my part one was fashion. This is my part two. I do believe that there will be a part three. And I can't wait for what that is. But I'm enjoying this right now. Like I'm like, I've been doing this for 7 years. Like it actually feels longer in such a good way because I have learned over 7 years. And when you think that you know so much from your past career, and like, I've lived all ups and downs in this. And what I would say is because being a mature founder, that's what, folks would say about us is because we're in this other, which was, we would originally, like, we were sitting across from, VCs and you've got 25-year-old boys sitting across from you. And we're like, we've seen things happen, like, but they're like, oh yeah, you guys aren't the right fit. Because we always felt like we were like, okay, people should look at us, that we've got this tenure behind us. Now I would actually say that's what's made us successful in what these 7 years have been, because we made it through COVID. We made it through all different pivots in our journey. And that is because of the experience that we had prior, that we could live in these up and down moments. And to your point, we can pivot, we can move fast, we can shift, we can readdress, we can look at expenses and say, oh shit, you know what? We need to pull from here and move to there, or we need to go and do this. And we have that flexibility to be able to do that. But some of it is because of our lived experiences prior to now what we're doing. So it's given us a lot of that success as well.
I could talk to you forever, but we're going
I
to
know.
close this up. I have one last question, and I think you'll like this one. It's your platform to give a message today to women of all ages, of all backgrounds, of all cultures. Danielle, what do you want to leave them with?
You know what? I think that everyone should realize that your path is not straight, and you have an opportunity to rebuild yourself in many different ways. Whether it is your career, whether it is your family, whether it is, friends, whatever it might be, we all have, nothing is a straight line. And I think that is really important, is there can be another chapter. They're scary. Having the courage, the bravery to sometimes take risks is hard. And the most important thing you can do is, if you are looking to make a change, ensure that you've got some support around you. I would say that's probably the most important thing, is finding those network of folks, those believers in you who will build you up, make sure that you do have the confidence and can help guide you. But know that there is not a straight path, and that there is many chapters you can have, but there's also, beyond the chapters, there's different parts as well. And think, for folks to really understand that you can actually have something very different that can be very meaningful, that can have impact, that can have purpose, and can readjust where you were. Because I will tell you, the title, the salary, I'd like to be making a little bit more than what, then it's a little tough, but that's okay. But what I would say is that, really those pieces, at the end of the day, those don't matter as much of what you can, having that path and that purpose, and knowing the impact you can have, but also that there can be a different opportunity for you on the other side.
I love that. I love the different opportunity on the other side. There's so much there. Danielle, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for getting
Thank
under the
you.
hood with me and
I
for
love
women
it.
around the
Thank
world.
you. Thank you so much. This is to be able to share, I appreciate being able to share my story. And if somebody can take just a nugget away and know that we all have something on the other side of our journeys, and we can redefine what our stories are. And I think that's a really important part, is that the story doesn't have to just go one way.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you said has resonated with me today. As I said, I feel like we've been on parallel paths doing the
Kismet.
same thing. Exactly. So thank you.
Yeah, Kismet energy.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Matt Butler, and edited by Matt Butler. The music is by Ayla Schaefer. Her song, Rose.